Good evening, Christine. How you doing? Can you hear me?
I'm good. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Good, good. Yes, I can hear you. Great. So how you doing this evening?
I'm well. I'm well. Thank you for asking. Thank you for having me.
No, you're very welcome. I'm actually, I know we talked a little bit before you came on and you said you were a little nervous, and so am I, and I think
Yeah.
that's just part of, you know, this whole thing. But anyway, I'm glad to
Mhm.
have you on the show tonight. I've been hearing a lot about you. I know before you came on, you were wondering why you, right? Why me? Who am I? I'm
Yeah.
just a regular Yonkers
Yeah.
resident and mom, but it's because it is you, Christine Peters, and and my whole journey now through this, political and stuff, and then the nonprofit stuff, and doing a lot of stuff in the community and meeting different people. Your name is one of the names that comes up, and I got to say good things, nothing bad. No one's saying anything
I
bad
hope
about
so.
you.
I hope so.
No, so I said I must have Christine on because education is something that's very important here in the city of Yonkers, right? And it's
I,
often talked about when politicians are talking, right? And many people in the community. So I wanted to have you on because I thought you were important. So, Christine, again, welcome to the show. And for people who didn't hear me in the beginning, Christine Peters is one of the founding members of Yonkers Parents Seeking Solutions, a coalition that is formed together, has over about 500 members, correct?
I think so.
Currently.
Yeah. On
Yeah,
Facebook. Yeah. Yeah.
on 500 over 500 members on Facebook, and their goal is to bring a change to the educational system here in Yonkers. They want to improve the quality of the educational experience for the students of Yonkers. So they've come together and they've been doing some things, and I thought it was important to have Christine on so we can discuss more about the education here in the city of Yonkers and some other things as well. But let's get right into it, Christine. Before I get right into the whole thick of things, I like to kind of just have folks give themselves I'll give a little background to the viewers who may not be familiar with you, and even those who may know you but may not know, maybe where you were born or where your family originated from. So I'll give you, a few minutes here. Just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. So I'm Christine Peters. I was born in Chennai, India. I came here when I was about 8 years old. After actually my dad was assassinated in a terrorist attack. He was one of the people in the crowd, and at the time they were trying to actually assassinate the prime minister. So father was there, and he happened to be in the crowd. It was a political rally, and he just happened to be an unfortunate victim as well. So when we came here, things were sort of like a little bit challenging. My mom was a single mom. She had two kids, and she had to navigate this brand new system, this brand new country, all of these different sort of like variations of like race and culture when we were sort of the majority in this other country, right? Because we were Indian, we were
Right.
from India, and then coming to this country, it was just sort of like this very different sort of understanding, different lifestyle. We were also very middle class there. We came here, we were sort of like dirt poor. And at the time, immigrants really couldn't get any sort of like supportive services. So we really like started from the bottom, right? And we basically cobbled together a life that was, based on our sort of like values of, education is really the door that accesses so much more.
Yeah,
Um, to be grateful for everything that you have, even if the things that you have are not so great, you're still grateful
right.
for the things that you do have.
Absolutely.
So I came here. I'm a product of the Yonkers Public Schools. I really see myself as somebody who was raised by like the sort of like village that is Yonkers. It's a big city. It's one of the
Right.
largest cities in New York, but it's also a very small city, right? So I was really influenced by several of my teachers, different community members, and
Well,
then I
well, I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you off, but let me just go back a little bit. So, how
yeah.
did just tell me a little bit about how it was coming here to the country and going from being the majority, right, to now being the
Mhm.
minority. How was that experience for you?
So I think sort of like racially we're the majority, but to some extent, so I'm Anglo-Indian. And in that sense, we were sort of the minority. And in India, there's a lot of sort of prejudice towards people that are Anglo-Indian because we're sort of seen as like, the products of like colonialism and all these different sorts of things. So there was a lot of different ways in which they discriminated against Anglo-Indians. My mom was Hindu, my dad was Anglo-Indian, but the children that are born from that are just Anglo-Indian. My father had a lot of difficulty working and stuff, so I understood some things. Coming here though, we were a brand new wave of immigrants, right? So people knew nothing about Indian people.
Right.
I think to this day, people are sort of like, they exoticize us in a lot of ways, and people will be like, oh, like Indian people eat burgers, like, or people will be
Wait,
like,
what do
oh,
they think that Indian people
well, it's
eat?
because like you're Hindu. They're like, oh, I thought you only eat curry. Or like people will be like, oh my gosh,
Wow.
like you're not Hindu, and I'm like, no, like I'm named after Christ, right? So I'm Christian.
Christian.
So well, I'm Catholic, but or at least I was raised Catholic. But it's sort of interesting the different sort of ideas that are made normative in our culture around Indian people. So
Right.
and especially when you're sort of like a newer wave of immigrants and there's not that much information, people just base it on the information that they've already sort of
Right.
had about
Right.
your group, and then they sort of stereotype you as well, right?
Right. Well, I'm
So
sorry. Again, I didn't know, I asked my wife, because you've met my wife, and
yeah,
you guys have talked and stuff. I wasn't sure, and even she was, at first wasn't sure, of your ethnicity. And we don't like to assume, especially, my wife, a lot of times she's often mistaken for being Hispanic, particularly
right,
Dominican. So we were,
right,
unsure in that sense, and I like to know because I think it's
right.
important, and I like to
No, people
fully.
think I'm Dominican all the time,
Yeah,
like
I'm sure you get that.
all
I
the
didn't know
time,
if it was
especially
Hispanic or if you were, a Black American. I wasn't sure.
right.
But it's very interesting, and that you were, not born here, but you came here, and you speak so well. Actually, you speak very well. I wouldn't even guess that you did, weren't born here in America. But again, you said you were the product of Yonkers Public Schools. So tell me, what schools did you attend at Yonkers?
So when we came here very late. We came here in July, August, like right in that borderline of like the end of July, early August. We actually had to move our dates of immigration just because we were supposed to come the end of May, but my dad passed away May 21st, so we had to move it, push it down. And we came here. When we came here, there were no more seats in any of the schools. We didn't know anything about the Pearls program or anything. So when I first came here, I was put into Enrico Fermi, which, for an 8-year-old turning 9, it was the best school ever. I danced for the majority of my day. Um, I loved it. They didn't actually have any math books to teach me, so I was sort of like the teacher's assistant, and I was sort of helping the other kids because in India they taught us, leaps and bounds ahead. So
Right.
when it came to certain things, I already knew so much of it, and I already learned it by the time I was in 4th grade. So
Well,
they couldn't really teach me new things back then.
yeah, I'm sorry. That's interesting. You say that the educational system back in India was better than what you were experiencing, and not to, we're not trying to be negative, but you said you were ahead, a little bit when
Right.
you got here to America. What was some of the differences, and why do you think that is? In terms of the equality there.
So when I was in school there, I went to a Catholic school, right? So I told you we were middle class. So I went to one of the best Catholic schools in my city because my parents are like they were both pretty neurotic about education and their children getting the best education. So our school was a little bit different in that we also had Saturday school. So we learned a lot of things in our Saturday school that was sort of like home and career ish kind of things. Like we learned to sew, we learned all these things. But during the week, it was very sort of regimented in that you did, your science every day, math every day. Everything was every day, right? I was also elementary school. And you had to practice. So homework was a big thing. You had to go home, you had to do homework. And also parents were sort of expected to be involved in sort of like sending off your children's homework, sitting down, doing it with them. It's a lot slower, the lifestyle too. Like my mom would come, on her lunch break, like give me lunch and go back to her office or whatever. My dad would come on the lunch break with his friends. Um, Gym was something that we did every day, and religion was something that we did every day. And it was just sort of like how, we came to expect it. When I came here, like I said, it was a lot of fun. I had dance as my magnet, in Enrico
Right.
Fermi. We had math, but I already started learning division in India, and they weren't really up to that when I came to school here.
And
They
what
were
grade
doing
did you
other
come into? I'm sorry. What grade
fourth
did you?
grade,
Fourth
fourth
grade.
grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
And I
so you
remember
were.
my teacher at the time, Miss Mangione. I run into her sometimes, actually. I think she might have just resigned or something. Like not resigned, but like she might have like retired or something recently. But I still remember her. She was a great teacher.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, they were at the time, when they sort of like got to see, what I can do, they wanted to skip me a couple of grades, but my mom was like, well, she's coming from a brand new country, I don't know if that's the best thing. So she just kept me, which I think was a good decision, right? Because emotionally, I wasn't in a
Right.
place coming to a brand new country. I wasn't in a place to skip a couple of grades. From Enrico Fermi, the teacher sort of recommended to my mom that I take the Pearls test. So I did. Took it in sixth grade, got in, went to, at the time, it was Museum Junior High School, which had
Me
the,
too.
yeah,
Hey,
yeah, we talked about
oh
this.
yes, we did. That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
got in. I got in seventh grade. I took the test seventh grade. So you were in seventh grade. You started
right.
at seventh grade in museum.
Yes.
So
So
tell me
we
a little about
started,
that.
so seventh grade, I went to Museum Junior High School. It was a little bit scary because I didn't go to museum with anybody else, right? There was there was one other kid, Christian, what's his name? Christian Pineda, actually, who came from Enrico Fermi, but I think he was on the museum studies side. So we never really like ran into each other. And even when we did, it was sort of like we weren't friends back then.
Right.
We're not gonna be friends now, you know? So I started sort of like a brand new group of friends, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember seventh grade going to the orientation, and actually, my mom became friends with this other mom. So then, you know, like we were expected to be friends. And actually, the person at the time, Sharianne, her and I are still friends, and you know, like we're still very close. So she was one of the first people I met. There's this woman now, but her name is Shalizmar. She was the first friend I made in seventh grade, and I felt so happy that I had another friend, right? And what I remember so strongly about like my educational experiences in Yonkers is that it was so diverse. Coming from India, I had my own
Sure.
sort of
Yeah.
like biases as well because I was like, who are all of you? I didn't even
Right.
know there were so many different cultures that existed in the world. So coming to Yonkers just sort of opened up my eyes, opened up my world, and gave me, such a rich experience because so many of the people that I met were just such amazing people, and they were so kind and so nice and so different, and they sort of added to the complexity that's me now,
Well, it sounds like
um
you had a pretty, good experience coming to, to the States here into New York. And from what it sounds like, because oftentimes you don't always hear that experience with those who are coming into the country, don't speak the language. They often find trouble. At least, in my experiences with my family and friends that we know Hispanic and the Hispanic community, they often find, that they have a little bit of trouble, so it's great that you had that experience coming in, and that's probably a lot of why you are who you are today, because I respect who you are, and the way you communicate. I can tell that you're a smart person. I can definitely tell. And you're right. When I was in museum school and I got into the gifted and talented program, as they called it, I didn't get to go in seventh grade because there weren't enough seats. However, I did pass the test. But the following year in eighth grade, they moved me up, right? And it was like a division, right? It
right,
was like two different sides. It's almost like, I don't know if you ever
right,
seen
right,
that movie,
right.
Class Act, with Kid and
No,
Play. Anyway,
no.
there's one side of the building, the one
Right,
side
it's
is
very
all hood.
segregated.
Yeah. And
Right,
there's,
right, right.
and then they go in and then, see this whole beautiful hallway and, all the resources and stuff that they had. And, and my experience is kind of similar to yours in that when I left Yonkers actually and went to school in the Midwest, the quality of the education there was really, really impressive, and that's why I asked, what were some
Mhm.
of the differences to where you had come from. But yeah, and so, I don't know. I often wonder if the people felt a little segregated, right? They felt like, because my friend
I
teased me a
I
little
felt
bit.
that way.
My friends
No,
teased me.
I felt that way. I mean, just even in the way that we related to each other and the names that we called each other, right? Like it was like the smart side or the dumb side, right? Like
Right.
it was just such a
Yeah.
terrible, terrible way that
Yeah.
children were sort of like relating to each other. And I mean, I made a very sort of like conscious effort to say the museum study side, right? But when you're sort of talking to each other
You
about
confused me.
but but it was extremely sort of like segregated,
Yeah.
right? And it's sort of like a microcosm of Yonkers in
Sure.
some
Yeah.
ways, right? At least Yonkers back in the day, because I mean, you were like, oh wow, like you had a really good experience transitioning and I guess sort of assimilating, and actually I didn't. I had a lot of difficulty. I spoke English,
Oh, okay.
but
So you came. Okay.
I came here speaking English at the time. I also spoke Tamil. I understood Hindi, but I actively chose to sort of push away from those parts because it felt so different and foreign here. And now I don't speak the language. I can understand it. I don't speak the language because I so desperately, as like a little kid, just wanted to sort of be accepted, because the place where I was coming from, I was accepted. I was just
Right.
like any other kid. And so I just wanted to experience that sense of normalcy again, and
Right.
and so I did sort of push away a little bit from that Indian culture that I brought here. But no, I actually didn't think that the transition was very good at all. I
Okay.
was
Tell me a little
bullied,
bit
I was
about that.
teased.
Yeah.
I mean, it was I had an accent, right? I had like sort of like a British Indian accent. And so I was different. I also was different in that, I already knew all of this math. So I was sort of like the teacher's pet in some way. I was this brand new kid who came in like fourth grade. And, it was a completely different culture. So I had a lot of difficulty even just like eating food in the cafeteria because I grew up eating Indian food. And I was like, what
Right.
is this?
You didn't
And it
eat the
was like,
bonk. They called it the bonk. I don't know if
they
you
did. They
did
called it
they.
the bonk. Yeah. The yellow school bus was the cheese. No, I
Right.
remember all of that.
Well,
Um,
tell me now. I mean, you've one of the founders of the Yonkers Parents Seeking Solutions.
right.
I want to ask you a little bit why you felt the need, or maybe it wasn't a need, you just wanted to maybe get more involved. The reason behind the coalition, and putting it together. Just a quick background, and maybe is there a difference from the way school was then to it is now, and is that why you felt maybe the need to create the coalition?
So, I went to Saunders, right? So for high school. So after museum, there was no, high school that was like a gifted and talented anything back
Mm,
then. I went to Saunders, and all I knew is that I was with some of my best friends. We had access to like AP classes. Our teachers were great. They were invested in us. We had all these different resources and these opportunities because I didn't know any different, right? Um, since then, I graduated. I went to Binghamton, and then from Binghamton, I went to NYU. Came back. I sort of made my life here, raising my daughter here. And I think really what started all of this is when the shutdown happened. My daughter's in Pearls right now. So she got in. I knew about the test, so I was one of those lucky people had the privilege of knowing about it. Because I grew up in the system. So I was like, she's gonna
right.
take that test. She got in. Um, but when the shutdown happened, I sort of reached out. Actually, I reached out to the PTA first, the PTA president first, because I was like, oh, parents have a vehicle to advocate, right? It's the PTA. So when I reached out to the PTA, I didn't really find them to be very responsive. So I was asking a lot of questions, and they were like, yes, yes, we're going to advocate. And it was with a bunch of other parents, actually. And actually, the response that we got was like, well, thank you for your suggestions. We'll keep that in mind. And I was like, suggestions? Oh no, I'm sorry, you misunderstood. I was asking questions and I would like some accountability, right? So I really didn't feel like my needs were being met in the parent level, right? As a student, I didn't know any better. All of my needs were really met because I didn't know what needs I had, right?
Right.
I didn't know about these other schools that had, so many different resources that were just literally my neighboring schools. I didn't know that they took them on college trips. I didn't know about all of these different things where they were able to access like internships early on, based on their parents' networks and all of these different things, right?
And you're
So,
talking about the different schools within the school system. Is that what you're referring to?
no, so I'm
'Cause-
talking about our neighboring like cities, right?
Oh,
So like
I
I
see.
went to
Neighboring cities, not neighboring
school.
schools. I got you. Okay.
Right, right. So I went to school with a lot of the kids that were surrounding us from Long Island, whatever, because I went to Binghamton. So there was a lot of
Right.
like neighboring,
I got you.
and
Yeah.
coming back to Yonkers and like raising my daughter here, I think I really just sort of realized, wow, we have a lot of resources, but we don't have the same types of resources to support students in the way
Right.
that, and more importantly, supporting parents to better understand what the students' needs are, right? What their children are like, like whoever they're the guardian for, what
Right.
their needs are and how
Well,
to
what
support their needs.
well, what was some
And
of the needs that you felt may not have been being addressed that you suggested, or what were some of your suggestions, I should say, that you made initially to the PTA, or correct?
so let me go back to the shutdown, right? So what happened was my daughter had no interaction with her teacher at all. Okay. So then we were like, wait, what's going on here? There are some classes where the teachers are teaching them via like Zoom or something, even if it's like 20, 30 minutes, right? My personal experience was I reached out to the teacher and I was like, hey, can you give me a checklist? And she was like, no. Go back to the app that we gave you. And I was like, but this is not helping. It was super confusing. I was home. I was still working because I was an essential worker. Because at the time I worked for Senator Shelley Mayer. So, I was trying to do that. because there were all these different people who had all these different needs that they had as well. I was trying to get my daughter some kind of education because I didn't want her to lose like a whole,
Right.
year or whatever, half a year. And I was sort of going a little bit crazy, and I just didn't feel supported in any way from the teacher side. I
Now,
reached
not, I'm
out.
sorry, not to cut you. I just want to ask, now that, some of the issues that you were having, I guess, with the complexities with the app, or maybe not fully understanding, and that's a valid point, because a lot of parents, were having issues with some of the platforms, and which is why we were there with our remote learning center. We were able to help out. But did you find that, well, obviously we saw some parents having some difficulty, but did you also find that other parents, or did you communicate with other parents to see
Right.
if they were also
So
having similar, issues
So
in
I
your?
did. So, I have friends who had children in other schools, and I also had other friends who were in that specific classroom and within the grade in Pearls, right? So then I started texting other moms and dads, being like, hey, am I the crazy person here? And they're like, yeah, no, none of us knows what's going on. So then I created a checklist and I sent it out. I created sort of like a social hour for the kids where we just sort of did like an hour of like the kids checking in. We all did like an art project because I really thought that the kids needed to interact with each other. They were stuck
Right.
with us. God help them. Their
Right.
parents 24/7 too. Like as much as we were stuck with them, they were
God
stuck
help
with
us parents
us.
too.
Right. God help us parents. But really, like, think
Right.
about it. They were going from having friendships and having space to now just being stuck with their parents who are
Right.
constantly like telling them what to do, right? And also their teachers. So that whole
And just the
social component,
social, aspect of
right,
it,
that
just in
social
general, I
component of
think
it
was,
for
yeah, missed.
everybody, it was
Right.
overwhelming. So what happened was I created these different sort of like substructures to help the kids within the grade. Then so I had a friend, Lucia, who was in a different school, and she was like, yeah, like, I don't know what's going on. Like, our kids have these assignments. We don't know how it's going to be graded. We don't really know what to expect. My daughter was also learning like math through Common Core, and I couldn't fully teaching her the wrong things. Like, I'm telling you, it was bad.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was sort of like, give me some direction on what I'm supposed to be
Right.
doing. I wanted to teach my daughter some stuff. I didn't know like what the syllabus was. I was like, share some stuff with me. Um, and then the teacher really, like she had a lot going on too. I get it. When I called the assistant principal to be like, somebody needs to help me here, she was sort of like, well, look, you know what? I get it. You have a lot of needs. We're trying to make sure that there's like milk and food to some of these families that don't have
Right.
anything. And I was like, what are you talking about? So, then I put together a list of like different pantries and stuff for these families because I was like, okay, well, that's the priority clearly. So I put together a list and I gave that to the assistant principal. But who I am, I was like, oh no, we can't do this. So then I emailed sort of the PTA to say, hey, help me. We can't have this happen in September, and I don't see this going away anytime soon, right? I was like, and also for the rest of the school year, we need some help. So
Well,
when
so
I
let me just go back. So you suggested, you presented a list to the school of the assistant principal at first, or someone in school, for the pantry, a list of pantries to present to the families that didn't need,
yeah,
okay, and they
yeah,
just,
yeah.
they didn't want to distribute the list. Is that
No,
what
no,
the?
they did. They
Oh,
distributed
okay.
lists. I worked with the social worker of the school. I'm sorry, I must be confusing. I'm all over the place, right? No, I worked with them to get their like the families who had needs
Right.
that were
Oh,
like
that was
more
awesome though.
immediate. Like like that was something that like that's not something that we need to go back and forth on. That just
Right.
needed to get done. We got it done.
I got you.
But then there were like the rest of us that sort of were like, okay, but let's get back to the educational needs of our children. Okay, like we need to like figure out how we're going to address this,
Right.
and we want to plan right for September. But we also want answers to why this is this way so that we can better plan because we knew it was not going away, right? So we were just like, look, this is not going away. There's no vaccine, there's nothing. This is going to sort of continue because this is and it's going to be problematic. So at the time, Lucia and I, a couple other parents, we reached out to Rob Rios because he was the president at the time. They
Okay.
couldn't have the elections or anything because because of the shutdown. And just the responses. I mean, I can share the emails with you if you want. Like it was just sort of like, what are you talking about? This is not how you handle this situation, right?
Right.
And it was sort of like, okay, well, there's already all of these other sort of like subcommittees in place to address this. We'll take your suggestions there. And we're like, oh no, I'm sorry, we weren't giving you suggestions. We had actual real concerns and questions that we want answered. Can you advocate for us to get answers? And we were shut down again. So
Well,
then
tell me
actually,
some of the questions, specifically. What were some of the questions you were
um,
looking to get answered?
I don't actually remember because it was like over a year ago, I'm thinking I could just like look it up on my phone and tell you because,
Yeah, I mean, and I'm just because I want to know, I get it. I think that during the pandemic it was rough, and I think that it was something new. And not that you don't have any valid points because that's something also that I've heard from other people, and not necessarily the PTA, but just in general with the school, I guess, in giving suggestions and the suggestions not being received well by school administrators or whoever, teachers. Why do you think that is? I mean, I from what I get from some people who are in the district and who work for the school system, they're always open to suggestions, but why do you think maybe that suggestions are not always welcomed, I guess, for lack of a better word?
You mean from the school district or the PTA?
No, well, from parents, because I've heard this before, right? I've heard, other people say that they've made suggestions or they wanted to make suggestions, to the school district, either to a teacher or to the administrators, but it wasn't often received well or received at all, really. And it was just didn't go anywhere. Why do you think that is? If that is an issue, why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, I can tell you the school district told us literally in an email, the only vehicle that we will work with when it comes to parents is the PTA because they're elected. But if you think about it, and then we said, well, that doesn't make any sense, right? Because A, not every parent is part of the PTA. So you're not really getting a full parent body. And B, you're responsive to parents, period, because you are educating our children. It shouldn't just be that you're working with the PTA. You should be working with other parents, even if we choose not to be a part of the PTA, right? You can't tell us if you want accountability and responsiveness from us, you have to be a part of this one entity. And yes, so we've brought up how like you have to pay dues to that entity. They've said, listen, if you can't afford it, you don't have to necessarily pay it. But what if I don't want to, right? Like, what if I just don't want to pay those dues or just don't want to be a part of that body? I still have a child that you're educating. You should still partner with me as a parent. So that's just one piece, right?
Yeah, I get that. That makes sense.
I happen to be a part of the PTA. Like I've always sort of like been a part of the PTA, and I've always sort of like worked with the PTA in whatever capacity. But honestly,
and how has that been? I mean, working in the past, working with the PTA, how's it been? Has it been a good
like
experience?
I didn't really have a lot of like needs, right? But with the PTA, like I went to one of the meetings. I'll tell you honestly, I don't know if it's a good experience or not, but just sort of who I am, I sort of look at society, I think, a little bit differently than most, right? So one of my first PTA meetings, was with the principal of Pearls, where he's like, what, look, we have this great opportunity here, like Pearls, the poverty rate in our school is 40%. We really benefit from the rest of Yonkers because the rest of Yonkers, it's like 70 to 80%. And I was sort of like, wait, are we having this conversation where we're saying that the parents that have more resources are the ones that get their children into this school that then also has
into
these
the Pearls
other
program?
Right.
Well, is it? I mean, I don't want to assume that it's based on income. Is it because I imagine they take tests to get in, right? So I got you. So maybe something.
What I'm saying is right. So something that was said in the first meeting was the poverty rate in this school, which is the gifted and talented school, is significantly less, almost half as much as like 50% lower than the rest of the district. And that's what I said, right? I'm a very different person. So then I'm like, wait, well, what does that mean? Are you saying that parents who have more financial sort of like resources are the ones that are getting their kids into these schools? And how, right? Is that something that affects us? And honestly, it does affect it, right? Like, I mean, just realistically, it does affect it because you can then spend more time with your children, teaching them, sitting down, going over like their letters, their numbers, whatever. Because time is a resource that you then get from having more financial stability.
And that's definitely something that I would agree with. I mean, not in even a sense that it's anything that's being done wrong, but just because of the the financial status of the parents, as they would say in Wall Street. people are, more sophisticated investors, as what they would say to, investors who had more money, who had a lot of money,
Right.
because meaning that they have a more understanding of certain things, like, the way that the Pearls program works and how when the test days come up and stuff like that, versus maybe some of the parents who, so I just wanted to clear that. I wasn't sure if you were, I didn't want to imply to anyone that we're suggesting that it's something being done negative there, because I don't want to make any accusations, anyway, from here.
No. I mean, but
that's a good point, though, and in the social aspect of it, that's a great point. I mean, to make.
Right. And so it was just one of the first things that I sort of heard, and I was like, oh, like, what are we doing to sort of equalize this then, so that all children have the access to this Gifted and Talented program, right?
All children have access to, resources, and opportunities that can help them improve on their educational, level.
Right.
And so they can maybe get into a Gifted and Talented program at some point, right? So, be kind of a proactive, no, against, I'm just, kind of adding.
No, you know what it is? Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll tell you. So I'm one of those people that I'm like, every child is gifted and talented. You have to find and support and nurture what they're gifted and talented in, right?
Sure.
My personal belief, right? But I work with children on the spectrum, and I've worked with children like almost my whole entire life. So for me to sort of craft this view is based on my interactions with children, right? And I genuinely think that, if you nurture every child based on the ways in which they need nurturing, you're going to see them turn into superstars, right?
Sure.
And so I guess that's sort of what my concern was. Like, look, I don't know if we're necessarily nurturing the children in the way that they need to be nurtured, and their needs and their education is being nurtured in that way. So then, because we sort of had this I sort of had this difficult time, so did a couple of my friends. We're like, you know what? I wonder if other parents had a difficult time. Let's all organize together and figure out how we can, fix this. So we put out this. So originally we weren't like, let's form a coalition, right? Originally we were like, let's get a support group for me and, other parents, because I need support. So it originally started off with, am I crazy, or are there other people out here who experienced a lot of these challenges too?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the pandemic brought on a lot of, unique challenges that, were not, haven't been seen before. And so, schools were kind of caught off guard, a lot of school districts. So I will, to be fair to the school districts, and because I've also, have my critiques or whatever. So I like to, say, to be fair, there were challenges, that they faced that were unique. Right. And also going back to what you said, I also worked in schools for students with special needs. I did that for 8 years, actually. So I do understand that, each child has their own unique talents, and each child is definitely special. And I think that's something that also has been talked about in the way that, kids are taught, right? It's kind of a cookie cutter, one size fits all. And either you get this or you just get left behind, right? And then so you have to almost be forced to learn that way. But like you said, not every child learns the same way. And like me, I'm a visual learner, right? You haven't put a book in front of me, and I'm probably not going to do as good in the test as if I can actually touch, the stuff. So it's another point that I think needs to be highlighted and really needs to be looked at, and maybe, thought about more.
Right. So, I mean, this all started off really as like a support group. And then as we heard different parents' experiences and different parents' needs and all of these different things, we're like, oh no, there's like a lot going on here that we need to sort of get together and advocate for.
Right.
So Carolyn at the time, so we weren't even close before the pandemic. Like we just happened to she happened to see a post of mine or something, and she was like, are you okay? And so that's how we even started talking, really. And then she was like, you know what, Christine, if you want to do this, I'm going to help you. And it was a little bit tricky at the time because I was working for the chair of the education committee, right? So me putting out
here in Yonkers.
Oh, so I worked for State Senator Shelley Mayer.
Right.
She was the chair
level
of the Senate, right? She was the chair of the education committee on the Senate level. And so it was.
Did you try to reach out to one of them? I mean, I just at the state level, I think that, yeah. Okay. How did that go?
So I reached out to Senator May. I mean, it wasn't about reaching out to her, right? I was crying in meetings that were,
So then you have a really close relationship with her.
Meetings.
So, yeah.
I've known Shelley for a long time, and I first met her because of her kids. Actually, I met her children first. So I've known her for a very long time, for over a decade. So it's something where I was sort of like, I'm so frustrated, I don't know what to do. And she was sort of like, everybody's in the same boat. It's difficult for the schools too, because she understood all the different sides.
Right.
Here's the thing though, right? I'm experiencing it from like having my kid here. And education is so important in my family, right? So I was kind of like, wait a second, like what's going on? And then there were other parents as well who were sort of like, what is going on? This is just, there's no communication, we're not understanding. There was just there was no communication really. Like that was the biggest part of the issue.
Right.
And then when we tried to communicate, it was kind of like, oh, thanks, but like sort of like know your place. And it was kind of like, wait a second, but our place is as your partner. What's going on?
Well,
and
who said, I'm just want to ask, who, what do you mean? Who said know your place?
Well, so what happened was originally I had sent an email to the superintendent to sort of be like, hey, listen. And then the head of the school, oh my God, the principal called me.
Okay.
And he was sort of like, oh, like, why didn't you reach out to me? And I was like, I did. I spoke to the assistant principal. My needs weren't being met. And how this works is you keep bumping it up each level. So I kept bumping it up, and then I got pushed back down.
So the superintendent reached out to the
principal, and then the principal called me, and it was like, well, how can we address this? I was like, I already told everybody how you can help me address this.
Right.
You didn't help me address it. I then created the solution. So I'm trying to make sure that this doesn't happen again, right? Like I said, I needed a list. I waited a few weeks. That didn't happen. I said I needed help figuring out this Common Core. I was told to go to YouTube. And then I went to YouTube, like really and truly.
You were told to go to YouTube?
Right. And so I was kind of like, well, I don't know which video on YouTube. It was like a whole thing. Like it was
I did learn how to cook on YouTube. I will say that.
No, but like, look, I already know how to cook, right? So I didn't need that at the time. And at the time, I was quite confused. I was quite frustrated. And I just wanted to teach my daughter the right way. You know what I taught her? Taught her how to carry over and borrow. That's what I taught my daughter, because I was like, you know what? It's not all working for me. And I said, why don't you tell me what video on YouTube to watch so I could learn? Like at least give me the right video. Otherwise I'm like, and I don't really watch YouTube, right? I'm just like gonna go down this like rabbit hole of craziness. So then anyway, then we got the parents together, and then we're like, wow, there are a lot of issues going on here. So then more and more parents started coming, because we were like, well, how do we get together, partner with the school to problem solve? And it was great. The meetings, like people were coming on. They were sort of like sharing their different experiences. And actually, Carmen, who's the president, came on to one of the meetings. She's like, we need a parent bill of rights. And I was like, Carmen, that is so smart. We do need that, right? And I was sort of like, look, yeah, like we did need that. Carmen Goodstein, the president of the PTA now. So I could fully shout her out, right? So she came to one of the meetings. She had brought that up. And since then, I know that Council President Mike Cater also brought that same exact idea up in his sort of like meeting where he created that special committee for special education. So then he also said something very similar, right? But that all being said, realistically, like it's the state level that governs the schools, right? And the trustees, right? So we were sort of like, look, we need a partnership with everybody so that we can make some stuff really happen. And Carolyn, at the time, I was still working, so I couldn't attend, because I always worked like 2 to 3 jobs. So I was working, I couldn't attend, but Carolyn was advocating for us to get technology, get the computers. This is not going away. The kids need access to computers because they can't access their education online. And we knew that from the shutdown in March, because there were all these children that they just couldn't even reach out to. So we're like, at least if you get computers, the kids can access their education. We'll try and figure some stuff out and work with you as well. Then, as we kept on saying, put in the computers, come September, the computers weren't here, right? Because there was a nationwide shortage everywhere.
Yeah.
What happened was, Carolyn tends to get different people reaching out to her. She's sort of like this channel for contacts or something.
Yeah.
And then yeah, and like, so people were like, yeah, no, Yonkers Public Schools hasn't even begun to like order anything. And we were like, what? So then
I think it was an issue of a budget issue, I think, on that, or they were talking about it for a while, and they didn't have the money, and I think they ultimately bonded for for some more laptops, right? Is that correct? Is that what
Right,
happened.
right,
Yeah.
right. So like it was a budget issue because they didn't prioritize that during the budget. And at the time, I think actually Councilmember Breen was like, I think we should look into these computers because the
Right.
shutdown happened. My memory is not like so great, but during the budget season, it was during COVID.
Right.
So I think for the most part, the council members knew that this is going to be an ongoing problem. So Carolyn did say multiple times, listen, this is going to be an ongoing problem. The kids couldn't access their education because that had already started where like random people were trying to get computers so kids can access their education
So, I
from
mean,
March through June.
I just want to go back. So is it at that time, did you guys actually form the coalition? Like when did you become, like Yonkers Parents Seeking Solutions? Because I heard you say you came up with the solutions, right? So I heard that word. So when did you actually, kind of officially have the coalition together?
Probably in July.
July.
Because we met like towards the end of June the first time and we're like, you know what, we're going to have to do a little bit more. So we're like, let's get all the parents together, figure out what all the different issues are, create categories, and then have the school district like meet us and sort of like address it. At the time, the school district, I think, was a little bit confused why somebody who was working for Senator Shelley Mayer was having a meeting. And I had to clarify that, like, first, I'm a parent, right? I'm an employee second.
Right.
I'm a parent first.
But you said, you were saying something about the, the education, the legislation up at the state level and having the close relationship with Shelley Mayer. Did you reach out to her maybe for some help and support? I know that's what I would, but hey, whoever it is, listen, can you help me with this problem? Because you seem to have a really close relationship. Did you try those channels? I mean, did you go? I'm just curious because that's what I would.
No, of course, absolutely. So check this out. So she is literally the state, like she's in charge of all of the schools, right? Like literally every single school she's responsive to and responsible for, sort of. Right? She does more of the budget stuff and gets them what they need. But multiple schools were reaching out to her. She was aware of what was going on here, so I did reach out to her, and I was like, "How? What's going on?" And she was like, "Look, Christine, there's a shortage everywhere. This is not just a Yonkers issue. The big 5 schools, and one of the best things that could have happened for me working there is, I have a more solid understanding of like our school system, right? I'm not saying I have a full, thorough understanding, but I have a more solid understanding, if that makes any sense."
Sure.
So did I reach out to her? Yes. So Georgia, Georgia Ashuta, who's the chair of that committee, she was somebody who sort of like helped me better understand a lot of things. And she's like, look, Dr. Quesada is doing the best that he can, but I was kind of like, right, but like they're not responding to me, right? Like that's nice that you guys all know that from your end. And part of this hierarchy is that you're the ones that fund the schools. So I'm glad that the top of the hierarchy knows what's going on. But me, the parent, who seemed like I was somehow at the bottom of the hierarchy, didn't know what was going on. And quite frankly, I shouldn't just get information based on my job role, right? So it was sort of like, okay, look, there's this whole group of parents. Can you answer our questions? That's what it really came down to.
So, but I mean, going back to, with this, when you had state level Shelley Mayer, so they said that Dr. Quesada was, he was handling it already. That's what that was pretty much what was said. And so was he? I mean, I'm just asking, I don't know if he was or not. Was he? How was he?
Oh, so I did
or
not.
The school in general, school district in general. I'm sorry.
Right. So I thought it was a conflict of interest to go to my employer and ask my employer specific questions having to do with my school district when she was the Senate chair. Right. So that was a personal thing on me where I was like, there's a little bit of a conflict of interest because I'm her employee and I'm going to have insider information that other people wouldn't necessarily get unless they were her employee.
Right.
So I went to the source, who was the superintendent of schools and the president of the board, invited everybody to come to a meeting with all the parents. Right. And I was like, look, we're going to have a Zoom meeting. Like all these parents have all these concerns. Come and answer our questions. At the time, though, I guess even though it was an open sort of a thing, the school district, like the trustees and the superintendent, called Shelley, my boss, and was like, "Are you having this meeting?" And she's like, "No, Christine is." And they were like, "Oh, well, what's going on?" And every time I had a meeting, they called Shelley. So I was sort of like, why? My phone number is on there. My email is on there. There's multiple ways to contact me.
Every time you had a meeting with your group, with the coalition?
Right.
I got you. Okay.
My like it was sort of like for clarification, but I was like, just call me for clarification. I'm pretty nice, right? Like you see me here, I'm pretty open. I'll you ask me a question, I'll answer your questions, right? So I was like, look, people can just call me. All I'm saying is let's get some answers to these questions that multiple parents have And it gives us an opportunity to really have like a robust discussion. And if there are so many obstacles and challenges, let's work together to really remove these obstacles and challenges, right? So that's really what our objective was. So let's come together, the parents, the teachers, the principals, the whomever, the administration, the trustees, the politicians as well, because you all have to fund this, right?
Yeah.
So let's all come together, part of the coalition, so that we can address some of these issues that we have going on. And some of these issues predated COVID, right? There were IEP issues that we just found out about. There were issues with,
Such
like
as
there were multiple children whose IEPs were not being met. There were, especially during COVID, right?
right. Well, yeah,
Um,
COVID. That was an issue. I
but
think
even prior
across
to
the country.
COVID,
Right.
right? But even prior to COVID, right? There were multiple children whose IEPs were just not really being met. There were multiple children who were awaiting like their IEP meetings, There were multiple children who were awaiting. I mean, this is what parents were telling us, right?
And why
Multiple
did they
children.
say why was there a reason that this was happening? I mean prior to the pandemic, because the pandemic, obviously, right? I mean, not obviously, but we
Right,
know
right.
why. But prior to pandemic, pre-pandemic, what was the reason behind that?
Well, so like, look, prior to the pandemic, right? My daughter didn't need that. So I don't necessarily know what the answer is prior to the pandemic, why something happened. The pandemic is really what sort of like sparked my sort of like actionable efforts to make a difference, right?
Right.
Because prior to that, I was just a single mom working 2 jobs, trying to make sure my daughter got to school on time, and I got her picked up on
Well,
time,
how was it your daughter's experience? From a personal perspective, how was your daughter's experience pre-pandemic in the Yonkers Public School System?
Um, I mean, I don't really know. Like my daughter sort of is like she didn't really like going to school. I know that her kindergarten teacher sort of questioned why she was there. Like I remember like we met for the first time to have her parent teacher conference and she's like, "Oh, you work for somebody, right?" I was like, "I'm sorry, what are you saying?" She's like, "You work for like a senator or something?" And I was like, "Yeah, I work for Senator Mayer." And she's like, "I was trying to figure out how your daughter got in here." I was like, "Oh, she took the Pearls test and you can go and request that." But like there was always sort
She
of
was
these
making
like
that implication. She tried to make that
right.
point.
She did. It wasn't
Yeah.
about trying. Like you did make the
Right.
implication. And I was like, you should go request her scores. In fact, I will sign whatever consent you want. And really, like, it didn't make sense because I'm the one that was like, are we going to meet so we could talk about my daughter? And then we had multiple sort of meetings around, like what her needs may be. So I don't know exactly what Eden's experience was because she was very young. She was in kindergarten. Like right now, my daughter just passed second grade. She's going into third grade. So we're talking about like kindergarten and half
Right.
of first grade, right?
Right.
That's a
So you
really
don't have
difficult
much to
time to
gauge, is
really
what you're saying.
fully
Right.
assess.
Well,
Right, right,
how was that experience? I
right,
mean,
right.
for the most
I
part.
mean, so her first grade experience, like I was sort of like, oh, well, I thought she had a 504 plan because my daughter went in with an IEP. And then they were like, oh, she doesn't really need an IEP, but we could put in a 504 plan for her because her kindergarten teacher thought that like she might have ADHD or something. I was like, all right, let's go get her tested. Let's see what, she does. We'll get her whatever she needs. They were like, I thought they said we could put in a 504 plan for right now. And I was like,
And
okay, let's do
explain to me,
that.
I'm sorry, explain to
Yeah.
me what a 504 plan is. Just, there's probably folks that are going to be watching that may not understand. And I think it's important for
Right.
everyone to know
Right.
what.
So a 504 plan is based on federal law, which is the IDEA, and it's Section 504 of the IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And that 504 section says that if you have a medical disability, you can have like environmental modifications and other sorts of modifications to support your education in that way. So with the possibility that Eden could have ADHD or something, they were like, we could put in like modifications right now, possibly for that. Let's go see if she has, ADHD. But she, they were like, we can make some modifications in the environment. So she can sit on the outside, she can stand up, she can have like time and a half, like different things that could support her in her needs. I thought I was saying yes, she could have that. They were saying no, we never had a formal 504 plan, right? But what happened was in first grade, when I spoke to the teacher, I was like, hey, because the teacher said, she sort of gets distracted and she needs to go to a separate area in order to take her test. I was like, oh, I think she has a 504 plan. Are you guys following it? The teacher then said to me, yes, it's I just assumed yes. Okay. And she was like, you might want to get her like a band that she could put on her chair so she could bounce it. I was like, should we request that from the school? She's like, it'll just be quicker if you can afford to get it. Just get it. I was like, all right, fine. Ordered on Amazon. It came in, Amazon Prime, whatever. Put it on her, and then the shutdown happened, right? She was like, oh, get this little seat that she could sit down and wiggle on, whatever. Fine. So this whole time I'm thinking she has a 504 plan. It's being followed because the teacher said, sure, we're following it.
Right.
And then the shutdown happened. And then I was like, wait, what's going on here? Then I found out actually she doesn't have that in second grade. Because then when I followed up with her teacher now, I was like, look, I don't know how this is going to work out with distance learning, but she supposedly has this 504 plan. The second grade teacher then said to me, no, she doesn't. I don't know what you're talking about. I then reached out to the school, psychologist, who was wonderful, Dr. Grace. And she sort of helped me navigate through this whole system. So I could see how people get sort of lost in the sauce if you don't understand these systems.
Is there some documentation or something that they should have given you, or you should have had to, that states that she's in this program and for sure? I mean, I don't understand how there could be confusion, and if there was confusion, then maybe you can explain that where the confusion lies, so maybe that can be addressed and it doesn't happen. Because I think it's important, right, to know whether or not you actually have the services that are being recommended to you.
Right. So in the meeting, when we left the meeting, we had not formalized any document because realistically, I didn't know if a 504 plan gets that document or not. I then found that out in second grade when they're like, oh, you would have had a follow-up meeting where an official 504 would have been put into place, right? The only thing that I knew about was the IEP process because I got an IEP before she went to school. As she was transitioning from CPSE into school, she got an IEP, right? So I knew about that process. So to tell like a parent, oh, well, why didn't you know? Like, you don't know what you don't know, right? So we have to affirmatively, like one of the things that I thought was super sort of crucial that came up in one of the YPSS meetings was we asked a question, does the Yonkers Public School tell parents what their like sort of rights are and what the right process is? And, Dr. Rodriguez was like, we do not have an affirmative obligation to do that from New York State. And we were sort of like, what?
So there's nowhere you can go to look this information up anywhere online.
Right.
And it's not, I think maybe, if, this, it should happen, right? Maybe I think it would help.
So what he was saying is we don't have an affirmative obligation, but we do our best to sort of help guide parents, like to tell them what they have to do or something. But I think what happens is oftentimes because we're such a large district, a lot of things get lost in the sauce, kind of, things just get lost in the sauce, I think. And parents don't know what they don't know. Like I found out literally 2 years later and I was like, what, this is crazy. I started the process. I then followed up. I did a lot of my own research, asked around, and I'm pretty resourceful, right? I'm also somebody that's going to harass you, especially when it comes to my child. When it comes to me, I won't. But when it comes to my child and her education, I'm going to keep on harassing you. Like, did you get this done? When can I see it? What,
Yeah. And I think that
every parent has that.
No, every parent doesn't have that. And I think that's one of the things my wife will say and agree with is that, and she says all the time, the parents that make the most noise, their kids get, the most attention, right? The squeaky wheel gets the oil. And so it's all about advocating for your parents, because if they know you're going to come, and even when I worked in a school, right, we knew the parents that would show up right to the school. So that child kind of got passes on things. They even got away with stuff that they probably shouldn't have gotten away with because they just did not want that parent in the office. And I'm not, I worked at a private separate, school, but, that was kind of something. So, I'm a person that, I grew up very poor and, now, thank God I do my thing a little bit now. But, a lot of that came from when I, being responsible. Right. So when it clicked for me in life was when I realized I needed to, be responsible and hold accountability. And I have to go out there and get it. It's not going to fall on my lap. So, and I just want to say also, and parents that are watching, it's very important that you advocate for your children. Because they will, and it's not just Yonkers Public School. It's not, I'm not targeting them specifically, but in general, if the parents know that the kid's parents, the teacher knows the kid's parents are not ever going to come in, they're, rarely ever, if involved, that kid is going to get that's one of the kids that's going to fall to the wayside, right? But the kids that have the parents that will come to the school, that will show up at the parent-teacher meetings, every single time and demand action, like their kids, their children get, the attention, they ultimately get the services. And yeah, there are things that need to be changed. And sometimes parents have to advocate, a little too much, I think, for things that should already be, in place, right? And things that they should be already there for the parents and teachers. And even like an open line of communication where parents and can, make suggestions or communicate with the school directly and not have to go through a PTA or any other organization, right? So yeah,
I just want to add one last thing. So
sure.
As we talk about, why were some of these IEPs sort of not met? Why were some of these, so one of the things that is in the budget document was this like ratios, right? Sorry, my dog.
No, that's okay.
But one of these things is like these ratios, like one social worker to every like 1,862 kids and all of these different things.
Right.
And so actually I was part of this like startup organization that was trying to do free and reduced cost services for children. So I connected the Yonkers Public Schools and this organization, and I'm not really sure what happened when we connected. They were like, oh, actually though, we have a partnership with like WJCS and all of these other sort of,
right.
Not-for-profits. And it's sort of like, okay, well, if you have those relationships, why don't we advocate for them to do some of the assessments then as well, right? Like some of it is just sort of like logical processing where you're sort of frustrated, where you're like, all right, I see for the budget document you have this, but if you have these other relationships, then why isn't it moving forward where the children's and it might be sort of like an issue where like you can only do it with internalized people, right? Where it has to be somebody who's part of the union, part of the staff, blah, blah, blah. But if you see, like realistically, that's not necessarily a thing, because if children miss services, they get compensatory services and they go outside of the school district for the compensatory services. Right. So, some of it is just frustrating, I think.
Yeah, it sounds like it's just disorganized. Right. That's what it sounds like. A lot of it is just about having it organized and having someone, be accountable for these things and take suggestions from. And that's why I was asking you about how to go with the suggestions, because I've heard this from other people before who have made suggestions and, to teachers or to the principal of the school, and it just was not received well.
It starts from the top down, I think, right? Because we made suggestions to the district, and that wasn't received well either.
Right.
So it's sort of like the culture, I think, that's just bought into.
Absolutely. I mean, as a person who owns businesses, I definitely will agree with you there. I believe that everything starts from the top down. I take full responsibility for everything, even though maybe the employee didn't show up to work, right? But it's still my responsibility ultimately. So I agree with that. But it sounds like there's just a lot going on, and that it needs to be organized. There needs to be someone that's okay. This is not the way it needs to be. Let me go in there, fix that up, and get it right. But it also needs to be more, I think, open to working with parents, even directly, without having to go through a PTA. But also, I think the PTA, the school district, as well as parents, everyone should work together, including your organization, Yonkers Parents Seeking Solutions. I mean, I think it's a positive thing. I think I don't see why another organization of parents that are committed to their children's education and are, taking up some action to see some things, improve is never a bad thing. I don't think,
Right, like we're not a threat. We're a partner.
Right. Absolutely. And I've often thought about this because I saw some of this stuff early on, Yonkers Parents Seeking Solutions and, whatever. And I just, for me, I think everybody kind of has a point. I just think that, we need to find ways to work together. And that's actually something I'm working on. I'm trying to build within people in the community to help me do some of the things that I'm doing within the community. Right. And it's not easy. So many different personalities and different egos at time. But I think that seems to be the big thing. Right. Like Catherine said, disorganized or straight neglected. Now, that you can make an argument, right? We can definitely have a debate about that. And I think some people might even agree with Catherine a whole lot, right? It's just straight neglected.
You got to bring Catherine on here next, Freddie.
Yeah, actually, I'll talk to her about it. Yeah. But maybe it could be that it's straight neglect, and I don't know. I don't have all the details. I'm not there, so I don't like to throw out, any accusations. I don't want to be sued like Hezi either, right? I don't want that issue. But anyway, I'm definitely a little bit different than that. But no, I think that I like to, approach things with a positive attitude, right? So maybe it is straight neglected. Maybe it's just disorganized. Either way, let's take a look at it and let's address it. Let's just fix it. Forget what the reason is, right?
I
Let's
will
get
tell
it
you,
fixed.
I don't know enough about the issues within the system to be able to, much like you say, like to be able to identify what the actual issue is.
Right.
I don't necessarily know whether it's disorganized or not. What I can say is based on my experience
Yeah.
that there's issues around accountability, right? There's also issues around transparency, and that's something that's a huge issue. Like we've put in
Yes, I
FOIL
agree.
requests, and they literally just ignore our FOIL requests or give us like no real response. And it's sort of like to the point where I called an attorney and I was like, can the school district do this? And the attorney was like, let me look into it. I'm the worst person that didn't follow up with the attorney, but
Well,
it
maybe you
is
should follow
something
up.
that I just
I'd like to know that.
I
Right.
should.
But
Right.
so you filed a FOIL request for, and for anyone who doesn't
all
know what that is, freedoms of information. You finish it because I'm learning it myself actually.
FOIL is the Freedom of Information Law. There's also, like there's the Freedom of Information Act, but it's
Right.
that's what it stands for, like the Freedom of Information Law. That's why it's a FOIL.
Right.
You put it in with the FOIL officer, who in this case is the communications person, I believe, like Jerry Fierstein.
Here in
I
Yonkers
don't know
or
if I'm
Westchester.
saying here in Yonkers.
Yonkers.
So if you're trying to do the city, then it would go through, I think, like they have their own thing, but in Yonkers for the school, it goes through Jerry Fierstein. I think I'm saying her name wrong, but it
Oh
goes
yes,
through
Jerry Fierstein, something like that.
Fierstein,
Something like that. Yes, I've heard the
anyway,
name.
you go
Actually.
through her. She's the FOIL officer.
Okay.
There's a letter that's on their website that you can go put in FOIL on the website. There's a letter and you could FOIL something. I FOILed all contracts that the city got into, like any contract that that the school district had. And I didn't get it, mostly because I was like, hey, you know what? There was this thing that I saw on the website. I was actually trying to be a help the whole time. And then, when you keep sort of getting pushed away and not answered, you get sort of tired and you get frustrated. Well, it wasn't even about looking for answers. I just got frustrated in trying to work with the school because I was sort of like, well, if you don't see me as a partner, I don't really want to work with you, right? And I didn't go looking for any other answers. And, I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, listen, I know something is here, right? Like I'm one of those people that's like, I'm going to invest my time in something that
that you're going to
that's
go
worth
if
investing
you're
my
not
time in.
if you're not receiving the help that you're seeking, that you go out and find a way to get that. That's what I mean.
I try.
Well, I mean, look, the school system here in Yonkers is often criticized, right? Maybe rightfully so. I'm not going to, not validate someone's feelings because I don't know 100%. What I think, though, is that there is enough, people saying, that things need to improve for things to really get looked at. So have someone really look into what's going on, why these issues continue to happen, and resolve it. Finally get it, because 100%. Education is important. I mean, any which way you look at it, the education of our kids are very important. It should never be political. It should never be about money. Sometimes I think, why don't they just do it? What is about money? Just do it, right? I don't know. Maybe
you can't do it without money. That's the problem, right?
Well, like the Fed.
You need to pay for things, Freddy. Come on.
Why not? The government prints money all the time. What do you mean? They're causing inflation right now.
Right. But the way in which our school is sort of structured and sort of funded is very different than
right. No. I know
other schools. Right?
I was being funny. Definitely. I definitely understand that. But my thing is that we need to be, we need to be just, what am I looking for? Just creative. I'm sorry. I couldn't think of the word. We need to be creative, and we need to think outside the box and figure it out. We can't, because it seems like that's always the same thing. Well, we don't have money, or this or that, this or that. This or that, right? So, I mean, when is that not going to be what the response is, right? When things are not happening, right?
Right now, there's a lot of money that came into the school system, right? Part of the reason why we're sort of so quiet is because I don't know the specific numbers, but the CARES Act, like there was a lot of money, I believe, that came into the school system federally. And there's a lot of money that came into the school system. Like they're finally going to get money. So it's sort of like, well, let's see.
Well, they get money every year.
But it's different, right? So like we're one of the so we don't levy our own.
700 million. I'm sorry.
Well, so there's like a couple of things, right? And you can all correct me if I'm wrong because I'm certainly not the expert in this. But there's the city part of the funding,
Right.
and then there's the state part of the funding, right? And because we're one of the big five, those are the two main funding sources. We don't like go and like levy the taxes and raise property taxes for schools and all of that in that way. Like, like the kids need this amount of money for football. Like we're gonna raise property taxes this amount. We
Right.
don't do that, right? Because we're like our system of funding is a little bit different, right? Because we like
And because
part
there's
of
no
that
football team.
whole well, the thing is because we have a very sort of like I'm just gonna say it right, like socioeconomically, our district is just challenged. Like earlier, I said
Right.
those numbers right, where we were saying 70 to 80%,
Yeah,
right? So
I
you're
hear
not
this.
gonna go levy the taxes from people who don't have that tax revenue and their
Right.
property values are not the same as like a Scarsdale. They don't have the money to do that, right?
Yeah,
So
but that
then
I'm sorry not to cut you off, and that comes up a lot. My thing is this: you can't, our kids, the kids, some kids should not be forced or have to suffer because there's not a certain amount of tax coming from that particular area, right? And so
wait, Freddie, I'm sorry. So we're funded from New York State. Like the way that our school is funded is different, is what I'm saying.
right,
Right?
okay, well maybe I'm not understanding. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So like New York State and the city, like of Yonkers, right? They're the ones that sort of fund the school as
Right,
opposed to like I mean, it's just a different way to fund it because we're one of the big five. That's all I'm saying, right?
right. Well, all
So
I'm saying
so
is
we're
that
quite dependent on the state and the city to sort of fund the schools in that way.
which I think is even better.
Right. So people would say that it's better, and then they found out that the state wasn't necessarily funding the schools at the level that they were supposed to fund the schools. Right now, they're funding the schools more. Like I said, we'll see what happens with all this money
Right.
that's there. But like even when you sort of infuse money into a system, you're not going to necessarily see the sort of outcomes until you do a study down the line,
Right.
right? Like you're not going to see it right away.
Right. Money's not just going to change it right away, but that seems to
Right.
be like the rebuttal why is this not happening? Why is this? Why
Right. We don't have
money,
funding
right?
for
So that's just,
psychologists. We don't have funding for resources. We don't have
well,
funding for
they did get
whatever.
some more money for social workers
Right
recently. So
now.
I
Right.
will,
That's what I'm
I
saying.
have to shout that out always,
Right. Right.
but yeah, but it just seems like money is what is always said to be the problem. We don't have enough money. We don't have, so all I'm saying, maybe I'm just stupid because I think it's that simple, which I think it is. I mean, why can't we just get the money? I mean, the state should be able to get the money from the federal government. I mean, they get money for a lot of other things. I mean, you know what I'm saying? They figure it out is what I'm saying. However you get the money, however the money
Yeah.
is sourced from, and however, just get the money.
Right.
We
Right.
should create equality within the schools. You should not be, it should be, especially within a school district, where you have inequality
Mhm.
within that one school district. Because I hear about the certain schools like the Charo, that just sticks in my head because the Charo, people talk about that. People want to get their children into the Charo, right? Because it's, I guess better school, they have more resources. But why? How is that the case? I don't understand that. So you're telling me, my people over here on Riverdale Avenue and South Broadway or whatever school is in that southwest section and doesn't have the same resources as people in DeCharo? They're in the same school district.
Right. Right. So I think there has to be sort of like an assessment of resources and
Yeah,
how you're
I
measuring
think so.
that, right? To say this school has more resources than this, and like so I really believe in equity as opposed to like equality more than anything else, right? So I think that people who need something more should get more so that then we can like all be working from a similar place, right? Like
What do you mean by that?
realistically,
Just explain that.
what do I
People
mean
who need
by
more should get
equity?
more.
Right, right. So for example, right, I'm 5 feet tall. I don't know how tall you are, Freddie. How tall are you?
5'11". I just missed
Okay, you're
the 6 feet
5'11".
mark. Yeah.
So I mean,
Yes, I'm
honestly, you
6
could have
feet.
told me whatever height. I was guessing you were taller than me. But
So you
like
should get
let's
a
say
taller
we're
chair
both
than me.
right. If we're both trying to reach to get a can that's at the top, if you could just reach the top, right, and you could grab that can, I'm somebody who might need a step stool, right? So somebody who needs more should be able to
I
get
got
more
that.
so that we could reach in and
I would
sort of
pick you
like,
up so you can grab it. That's what I would do if I was next to you.
I mean, usually I just, like,
That's just what
and
I
this is
do.
an example,
I
right?
help.
Like,
I
usually
just
I'm
take
like,
it on
excuse me,
myself.
can you just grab that for me? But what
And
I'm
I do that a
saying
lot
is,
actually
right,
at the supermarket. I
right,
do. And I've
right. I was
done a
I
lot
was
of
just
stuff.
giving an example of sort of
Right.
like,
No, I get
where
it. I
somebody needs more, you might want to like assist them in being able to
right.
reach for that same thing. They might need more assistance,
Yeah, I
right?
think some people have an issue sometimes with that, and I just wanted you to make that a little clear, because some
Right.
people say, why do just because you got people that say, I'm gonna just be straight up, oh, they don't work, they're lazy, so why do they get, you know what I mean, why are they getting stuff? Well, you
Right.
have people that are ignorant like that, right? You've heard that before. People say
Right.
things like that, right?
Right. But
Their
let
parents
me
need
be
to do
very
this.
clear, and let me spell out something else as well. So if you have a child that has autism, they absolutely need more resources than a child who is not
Oh,
on the
sure,
spectrum,
absolutely.
right? So there's another situation of sort of like equity in the sense that
But I'm
if you
thinking,
want
I'm
this
sorry, not to cut you.
child
I
to
was
be able
talking
to,
about class. I think maybe what I was more
well,
referring
you're
to.
talking about financial sort of like
Yeah, like
issues, right?
class, in
But when
class,
it comes to financial issues, look, even with myself, right? So I'm a single parent household versus like a dual parent household, right? So financially, I probably have less money than a dual parent household just because there's one income
right.
versus two, right? That being said, it does place a weight on my shoulders. A, I have to pay for more childcare. B, I have to spend less. I have to spend less time with my child, and like my daughter gets less interactive time with the
Yeah.
parent than
I think I agree
another.
with you, though. I think maybe
You
I'm not
understand what
really
I'm
clear. We
saying?
agree with you, because when I was talking about class, I mean, why can't we get more for those who don't have more, right? So that's what I
Right.
mean,
That's
right? So
exactly what I'm
that's what I'm saying.
saying.
So, I just don't understand why it can't happen. I don't know. I wish I was in charge. I would just make it happen somehow. And I'm not even saying that because I want to be in charge. I really don't want the pressure. But I'm just saying it. I would figure it out. Like, I would be creative. I would, it'd be a mission of mine. It just would be a mission of mine. And this is why sometimes I kind of, say things that what I say on my podcast, or even as on my page and posts, and about certain politicians or politicians in general, because I just feel like I would be out there. I would be like pounding the pavement, knocking on doors, even beating people up if I have to. Come here, you're gonna sign that bill. Get more money, right? And I'm being funny, but I'm just saying I would do whatever it took to get that to make it, just even, I guess, level the playing field, right? That's all I'm saying. And I just don't understand why it's just we're still here. We're still having, people like your children, your kids are having, they're not getting their needs met all the way when they should be, right? I just don't understand why that's still happening in 2021. I just don't get it. That's all.
Well, and the answer is because there's funding issues, right? Like,
right.
and you're like, why are there funding issues? Because realistically, a lot of the richer districts can raise their property taxes, and the people pay directly out of their pocket for their children to be able to have a football team in each school,
So why
to
doesn't
have
this
uniforms and whatever in each school.
right?
We as a district, we're talking about poverty. We as a district have a higher level of poverty, so we can't go into our wallets and pay more money for every single school to have that school pride like they did when I was younger, right? Like, so I still I still sort of challenge people. I'm like, Saunders had the best football team. I remember going, they're like, Saunders was trash. And as much as you sort of like have that little bit of banter and you're like, oh, Gordon, whatever, I'm from Saunders, that school pride and a little bit of that camaraderie that you had from being from Saunders. We still see people from Saunders and we're like, hey, how you doing? How are you? Like, I remember you. You were the same year, whatever.
I mean,
But
sports
that
is
sort of
important. I
school
think.
spirit is important.
Yeah, and
I
even
wasn't
just
in any sports.
No, well, I
any
mean,
sports,
I went to a school. I went to a school that had an amazing sports program. I mean, it was amazing. It was, just whatever. It was amazing, and it did so much. I mean, it gave a lot of opportunities for kids to get college educations for free, even though they didn't go to football, NFL, but they got it free. So, and I just think that we're missing out on so much. And I get it. There's a need for money. You can't raise, someone else's taxes or whatever. All I'm saying is that we should be creative, right? All right, we don't raise taxes, but we find it some way, but we make it happen. Make it happen. That's all I'm saying.
I found that sort of like that not-for-profit that was trying to start up to provide resources for children. I was like, hey, listen, they're trying to do this for free. They want to work with districts that are socioeconomically challenged. We are that district. Let's come back. Let's come together. What happened with that? I don't know. Like, you can lead a horse, like
Too many
Like
hands in the pot.
I'm trying to be creative as well. And listen, hey, if you're saying let's be creative,
I don't
you
mean
and
you. I don't mean you.
what I'm saying
Yeah.
is, right, like you need a partnership with the people who are
Sure.
at the top of the hierarchy
Absolutely.
when it comes
That's what
to
I'm
the
trying
school
to do.
district.
Yeah.
So the top of that hierarchy is the board of trustees and the superintendent. There's nobody higher than that. Maybe the mayor, because he's the one that appoints all the board of trustees. Like that's the top of the hierarchy. Okay.
So maybe we
So
gotta talk to these
realistically,
guys
we need
and
buy-in
gals.
from everybody, right?
I
And
agree.
quite frankly, if we're gonna be honest, right? You want to talk about politics? So here's something a little bit provocative that I'm going to say, right?
Say it.
So I think that probably that Lakeisha Collins Bellamy is going to win city council president, right? That's just my prediction. I'm sort of
Oh,
like predicting that
It's a good
probably will
prediction. I
happen
mean, after what
based
happened in
on
the primaries,
number of
anything
people
could
that
happen.
are registered Dems in Yonkers, right? So that means that there will be an opening in the board of trustees, the Yonkers board of trustees for the board of education, right? And I think that there needs to be somebody who's a parent in there who's actually going to advocate. And maybe Freddie, you should be that person.
No, I can't be. You know why?
Or
No.
you know what,
I'll tell you
who
why.
else would be a really good person is and a friend of mine, Janai Wallace, actually said this. She was like, you know what, Carlos,
Burgos?
Yes, Burgos.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
He would be a great option as well. There are so many great options in
That's
this
a dope
city
idea.
that should and could have this opportunity to have their voice heard, who
Yeah.
can really speak to like critical race theory, who could speak to like equity, who could speak to like so many different
Can
things
you do me a
that we
favor?
could bring up and
you-
we can.
Can you just really quick tell me about the critical race theory thing really quick? I'm so busy at work that I don't even get time to do much. And I'm sorry for everyone that
What do you
has
mean
not.
to tell you?
Just
about
kind
it?
of
What
break
I mean?
it, just and not just me, but those watching. Explain critical race theory.
So it's sort of like a compilation of ideas from various leaders in this movement towards like understanding race and sort of like dismantling, racism, right? In our current world. So it's not to take away from anybody else. It's not to sort of like take away from people who are not. I'm sorry, let me just like end this call. It's not to take away from anybody else. It's not to like create a hierarchy. It's to dismantle hierarchy and to create equality, basically, right? So there's various contributing people who have spoken to it. I mean, so like when I was in college, right, like I was reading Audre Lorde, and for me that was something. So for the first time ever, she was talking about how you cannot extract her being a woman and her race. It was the first time where I read something where I was like, that's so interesting that somebody's saying this, right? Because that's true. I feel this way, that there's no way to sort of say, like, what is society interacting with when it comes to me? Is society interacting with my race, or is society interacting with my gender? They're one and the same for me and who I am and how the world experiences me, right? The world immediately sees me, and you see my gender, may not know what my race is, as you said, or my ethnicity, but you're immediately interacting with me in that way, right? So when people talk about this, and they're talking about like really listening to the voices so that we can deconstruct racism, right? We're not trying, like, people are not saying, listen, take anything away. It's saying,
but do you think that it might be provoking more racism?
No, I don't.
And I say that because I've seen the arguments, and look, some people are feeling neglected, right? And you can make the argument and say, well, they've been the majority, so they've, it is what it, but I think that what it does is well, some people, what they've said, it feels like it starts to really like show, hey, he's white, he's black, he's brown, like you're starting to like point out the difference. And so for some people, they're actually thinking about race more, right? And maybe for some other groups, they're starting to have some resentment because of it. So rather than improving the race relations, you're actually increasing or perpetuating them, or creating future, racist, because these, some of the kids that were going to school felt, isolated now, or felt like they were, because I heard one student in particular, he was a white student, and he felt that, when they first came to school and they started to talk about this, he felt that, now I was, being made to be like a bad guy for being white. You know what I mean? And look, I'm not picking a side. I'm just playing, devil's advocate, and that's even something I've told myself, because if some people seem to be getting upset with it, so is it perpetuating more hate? You know what I mean? Like, is it
right? My personal
improving?
opinion,
Because I look at you as just Christine Peters. When I engage you,
right,
right? I don't, and
right.
I do that with her. I'm not looking. I'm, yeah, of course we think about it. And I think more because of race is just more in the media and stuff. But
But you thought
genuinely,
about it though, and so did your wife, and you were like, "We
right,
don't know how to
right.
categorize
Yeah,
her."
yeah.
Right? You
But it
said that to
wasn't
me
it.
when we opened this up.
Yeah,
We
I
don't
did. I
know how to
did.
categorize
Yeah,
her,
because you
right?
know why people are gonna wonder, because race is
Absolutely.
isn't a thing. But me
That's my
personally,
point.
I genuinely just engage people by whoever they are, their personality, right? So, and I think maybe we should, I don't know, maybe we should kind of focus on that kind of. Let's talk about the human being race, right? The
Right.
human
No,
race,
but like,
and so I don't
listen,
know. I just think that was just something I
look,
want to say.
no, look, the human race is the human race, right? Like that's one thing. What I'm saying, however, is though people have interactions with society, and I'm not saying that people who are Caucasian don't have like challenges and difficulties. That's not what I'm saying at all. That child feeling like a bad guy is not something that child should feel. He's a
Right.
child, first of all.
That's what I
Okay,
mean, and
so
that's just
how it
what I'm
was
saying. So maybe we have to be sensitive to everybody. Everybody,
right. So
especially
I
children.
just want to like sort of finish, right?
But it's not. I'm
So,
sorry.
like
Go ahead.
that no, so like how that child experienced that conversation might not have been validating of his feelings. So, we need to have a conversation where everybody sort of feels validated and understood. So maybe there needs to be so like when as a social worker, right, you do a lot of psychoeducation, right? So maybe there needed to be some like sort of foundational education and understanding of what the conversation was supposed to be about so that it wasn't like, hey, like the white kids in the room are not the issue. It's understanding systemic how
Right.
multiple
There you go.
systems based
Yeah.
on like legislation and politics and community and like like not-for-profits and like religion and all of these various systems, right? Education, politics, um the prison system, labor systems, all of these different, and those are just a couple of examples that I'm
Right.
giving you, right? Legislative systems, judicial systems, there are so many different systems have all been influenced with this foundation of like race and racism because that's what our country was founded on, right? So we're going to go forward and we're going to say, listen, we're going to be responsive not only to the needs of the hierarchy, we're going to be responsive to the needs of everybody. Well, that's exactly what critical race theory is, right? It's
Right.
saying, look, we need to look at the needs of everybody. We need to look at like how we as individuals, how our laws are responsive to everybody, and how can we be responsible in meeting everybody's needs. So that's the actual. I mean, maybe it's not understood in that way, and maybe my
Yeah, I
understanding
mean, from
is
what
not
some
the
of the people have
best.
been saying, maybe, white students have been saying they feel like they're, being singled out now they think about race more. Now they, when they look at their black friend, they look at the color now. So I don't know if it's having a positive effect. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I really, don't know. I just know that
Are
what
you
I do
telling me
know.
that they did not see their color before? I like, you know
Well,
what?
that's
I
what
have
they
a
say. I
personal
don't know.
thing.
Look, I don't know.
Right. I have a
That's what they
personal
say.
thing when somebody is like, "Oh my God, Christine, I didn't see your color," and I'm like, "I'm sorry. Are you blind? Because I don't understand how you could not. You certainly didn't see me
Maybe
as
not
somebody who
visually,
was
not
white."
meaning like not yeah, obviously, they see your color, but meaning like it's not a thought in their mind when they engage you, right? They
Right.
don't
Right. They're not
engage,
like I'm
right?
engaging with Christine, the Indian woman, right? But
Right.
what I'm
I'm
saying
just
is,
engaging Christine.
right, right. But what I'm saying is, you cannot separate the fact that the way in which I experience this world is as a woman of color, right? So, as a woman and as a woman of color, that's something that I've always sort of experienced, right? So, I can tell you example after example after example after example of where race has been something that has been a barrier to me when people
Right.
don't even know what my race is,
Right.
right? And their
But because you're
assumptions
just
of
dark.
what my race is,
You're
right?
gonna
I
be
have
with us regardless.
but what I'm saying is, that's what I'm saying though, right? It's because I am not white.
Right.
So at the end of the day, and I've literally had people say to me, "Well, you're not white." And I'm like, "No, I understand that." So what are you saying to me,
What do you
right?
mean? Why did
Outside
they
of
say
like
that?
clubs or whatever, like I'll tell you, like back in the day, I don't know if I should say this on the, but back in the day,
Say
One
whatever, yeah.
Oak used to, I was going to club, but back in the day, One Oak used to be a very like hard door to get into.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, he was coming down, he had bottle service. I was outside waiting with another friend of mine because we were all meeting up. We hadn't seen each other in a while. And literally the bouncers were letting in these underage girls. And I was like, listen, what is going on here? And he basically was like, oh, we have a certain clientele we have to let in. And I was like, what clientele do you have to let in? Underage girls? What are you doing to those girls that you're letting them in? Because, you know, at the time I was like 24, 25 or something. And they were like, well, it's not about them being underage. We try not to let in underage girls, but, you know, like, there's a certain clientele. And I was like, what is the clientele exactly?
Right.
So then I asked the guy, I was like, are you saying it's because I'm not white? And he was like, come on, you know what it is. And I was like, you're Asian. And you, the bouncer, you're black. Like, why would you all subscribe to this?
You know why?
And he was like, well, it's my job.
The same reason why I see everyone subscribing to it in business. Because at the end of the day, what matters most and what's ultimately important is class. It's not about race, to me anyway. I've had people, you know, be racist towards me.
Let me be very clear, right? Yeah. Because at the end of the day,
now I'm gonna probably get a lot of flack for that. But anyway, go ahead.
But at the end of the day, though, the people that I was with, it wasn't necessarily a class matter, because they were people that were buying bottle service, and they were doing all of the things that people, like I'm telling you, they had the table reserved. So I was standing there with them. The guy finally came who reserved the bottle service. He's like, what's going on here? And they were like, oh, we sorry, you know. And he was like, oh, we're not doing this anymore. And we left. We went to the Gansevoort instead, because we never had any issues with them before. But I'm telling you, it was literally me that stopped this.
Right.
And it had to do with race, even though there was a bottle service reservation. Right. So even with that class, we're at the same class as these other people that have the bottle service.
Right.
There was a stop, because they were like, we can't let too many brown people in here. We have to let more white people in to balance it out.
Yeah. And then at that point, you say, you know what? I'm not going to that business, and keep it moving.
You can't have my business. Should have called the cops and have them raided.
Club, and I'm inviting everybody in, even the whites. Come on, you come too. I don't care. You know, I say that because I've experienced racism. I've experienced racism. My wife has, since, you know, she was young. Since I was young, they would, you know, I've experienced white men talking down to my grandparents and stuff. You know, however, you know, there's ignorant people in every race, and I'm going to tell you why.
Absolutely.
And my wife was in the store the other day, right? We have the bodega. We call it our bodega. It's not a bodega, whatever. But it's not a bodega technically, but we call it our bodega. And the owners are Indian. Okay. And excuse me if I don't know this, but the gentleman, and I believe it's the father, he has you know, the traditional what do you call it? I don't want to say it wrong. On the forehead, he has the red, you know, marking on the religious red mark on the forehead, right? So there's a black man behind my wife, and he's attending to someone else in front of my wife. And so I guess he wasn't moving fast enough, and the black gentleman says, and please forgive me if I say it, you know, I'm not trying to offend anyone. I just want to tell you what to say. He said, "Hey, red dot, what's taking you so long?" And my wife was appalled. My wife was I'm glad I wasn't there, because I would have said something. I have. And it just further proves my point that ignorant people come in all shades and colors. And I think that we do so much focusing on that we actually cause more division, you know, between us, you know, rather than bring us more together. We have to accept that there's ignorant people, right? And then we change the system.
I mean, isn't that in a Jay-Z song? Like, oh, dot or feather in the what song is that?
There you go. Red dot of, you know, she said she was from something. Yeah, exactly. There you go. Right. And if you look at black comedians, right, they'll make jokes in front of white people all day long, and everybody just laughs at it, right? So, you know, and this goes with the women, right? It's with double standard in women, right, and men, right? That, you know, as a woman, you know, you felt that as well. So, you know, we have to really, instead of focusing on the differences, we need to start focusing on the similarities. And I think that's how we bring each other together, you know. You know, and I've had so many debates with people, and I'm all about unity. I'm all about love. We're going to enter the age of love. So I'm all about love and unity. And I think that we need to just stop focusing on it, you know, because again, there's ignorant people in all races. And I don't think racism, even though I've experienced it a lot, and so has my wife, has ever prevented me from achieving my dreams, and I live a great life, and I'm so blessed. But really quick before I let you go, Christine, I wanted to just leave on, wanted you to kind of tell us, is there anything you going to be doing, the coalition, Yonkers Parents Seeking Solutions, going to be doing in the future? Are there any, specific, issues maybe that you guys are addressing currently? What are you guys currently doing with the coalition?
I mean, so since we're a coalition, really it's like about what parents bring to us, right? So if there's issues that parents, want us to sort of like advocate for, we could try our best,
Right.
School district has to be open to it. But certainly parents are more than welcome to reach out to us. Like Caroline and I are usually pretty responsive, if you reach out to us and try, if there's something that you need help with, if we can sort of like help navigate the system, or if you're just sort of like, hey, Christine, Caroline, like, can we just get a cup of coffee? We're trying to better understand this school system and we want to just better navigate it, or we have like this specific issue, can you help us? Just as individuals, we sort of are like, okay, sure, like why don't we have a phone call, why don't we grab a cup of coffee or something? So right now nobody's really reached out to us.
I think that's great, though.
People reached out to us,
I think that's great that you have that open door policy for parents, because I think it's important that someone is there to address the needs. And I look, I'm not saying that there aren't anyone there, but just for you to offer that additional support to parents out there in the community. I hope that parents who watch this or have watched this or are watching this hear that, and if there are any issues or concerns, you can reach out to Christine Peters and Carolyn from Yonkers Parents Seeking Solutions. And I think that's dope. That's a dope idea. And look, Christine, first time we've actually talked and actually, looking at each other, he's always been over the phone, is a pleasure. You know what I mean? I try to always be good with everybody, and have a good relationship with everybody. So, I know you said, I hope everything was good. What people were saying. I said, no, honestly, people said good things. I didn't really hear anything negative. And I try not to get into the negative, but I do speak my mind, and I think you can appreciate that, So
I think you can't move forward unless there's a collaboration of different ideas. And
absolutely,
like you're like, hey, this is how I think we can move forward. And I'm like, oh, I think we have to move forward in this way, right? And
absolutely,
it can only work if we all come together and collaborate, right? That's what a democracy is.
I definitely agree.
I highly buy into that idea.
I do. I definitely agree. We need to come together, and I like to see you guys work together. Yonkers Parents Seeking Solution, the Yonkers Parents Teachers Association, because I think you guys can really be a force together to really do a lot of things. And YSEPTA also, special needs students. I think you guys can be an amazing force.
We have collaborated on something,
and you guys should continue to do it.
We do,
yeah. You guys should continue to do it. And
I haven't really needed collaboration on anything recently because parents haven't really come to us. That's really what it is. Like we're not in any way against collaborating.
No, I'm not saying that. I just think that what I've learned, and especially in the recent years, is that bringing people together to help. You just do so much more. I always want to do everything myself, but I've learned that it definitely is great, and people bring amazing ideas.
Burnout.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Which I'm heading towards. So excuse me, everyone who have not responded to. I apologize. It's really not intentional. I'm not trying to be an asshole. So I'm sorry. I think
you that on.
Yeah, of course. This is my show. I say whatever I want. But I like to see more unity, and I like to work with you even in the future, and anyone, anyone that's looking to better the community in some way. I'm actually doing the lunch program in the square. I don't know if you've seen that, but I put together lunches and lunch bags.
I live like down the street.
Yeah, I was out there. I was up there
know,
yesterday, and I was I went out there. I had my office manager put together some sandwiches, from cold cuts and stuff that I bought that early that morning, and I went out to hand them out, with a box and waters and stuff, and and people appreciate it, and I felt good doing it, and they appreciated. I saw the smiles in their face, so I want to continue doing that, and it all stemmed from early this week or last week, maybe I saw a gentleman digging in the garbage for food, right, and it just broke my heart.
You should talk to my daughter, Freddy. She's trying to get these blessing boxes down here. Do you know what that is? It's a mini pantry that she wants to put here, where the community would sort of like restock it.
What's her name?
Who is my daughter?
Your daughter, yeah.
Eden Peters. She has the same last name as me.
No, I mean, like,
her name is Eden.
How old is she? I'm sorry.
She's 8. She's 8.
Oh, 8. Wait, that's what I'm confused because I'm like, I thought you had younger daughters. I didn't know your daughter was, she's 8 years old, but that's amazing for 8 years old. I was thinking someone that was like 20 something.
Philanthropic.
That's what I was like, who are you talking about? No, that's dope. She's more than welcome. I do the stuff out of the center there, and I put everything together. So I think unity is definitely what we need to focus on. So let's build together and say hi to Eden for me.
You can say hi to her. I'm going to tell her to come here. Come here, Eden. She can't hear anything. Here, I'm going to give her this. We have to go. I didn't
I'm gonna end it up here. I'm gonna end it here. I didn't realize either.
Say hello. Come here. Say hello. Look, here's my door. Eden.
Hi, Eden. Hello. Are you gonna come help me? Are you gonna come help me? Yeah. Feed some people that are in need. I would love for you to come. I would definitely welcome you and appreciate it. I'm sorry.
No, I said who are food insecure. That's all.
I would definitely. So yeah, I'll definitely love it. If you want to reach out to me, we can definitely do that. Actually, people have been reaching out to me. A lot of people are looking to help and donate and be a part of it. So it's going to grow. I even had people as far as Rockland County reaching out that are actually doing programs there in Rockland County, and they want to help bring similar programs here. So definitely. So I definitely look for all the help I can get. So it was great seeing you, Eden. Christine, it was a pleasure.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank
you for coming on. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to speaking with you some more in the future. And you know how to reach me. So if there's anything, please feel free to reach me. But I will be doing that. I'm going to try to do it every week. But we definitely going to be doing it on Wednesdays. But I want to do it every day. So if you know people that are interested, your daughter, I know she's interested. If you know more people, that'd be great. Because I only have so much dollars in my pocket. So Christine, it was a pleasure. You have a great weekend. All right. Have a good night. Take care. Bye-bye. Folks, thank you for joining us. That one actually went long. We got kind of to talking there, and I'm a talker, and it happens. But I do want to leave you with this. I want to let everyone know that I will be collecting from the community. Any donations, anything is appreciated in terms of food, cold cuts, cheese, ham, turkey, bread, hygiene products, very important, hygiene products, water, fruits. I like to, give out some apples, bananas as well. And I'm not being picky when I say this, but I if possible, if it can be as fresh as possible, in the event that we get, a lot of food and, and we have to store some of it, I don't want it to go bad. Right. So I want to be able to give it out the following day and do this as many days as possible throughout the week. So I wanted to put that out there. So it's called Feed the Need. Right. We feed the need. And it's not just hunger. There are a lot of needs out there in our community and in this world, but we're here in Yonkers. So feed the need. And I'm starting with the lunch program that I'm doing. And I started in Getty Square, but I like to expand throughout the city. So if anyone or you in particular would like to be a part of what I'm doing, please reach out to me. You can email me at Vazquez. That's my wife's email. AVAZQUEZ at pushworldwide.org. Pushworldwide.org. That's Vazquez at pushworldwide.org. Let us know how you would like to help. Everything's appreciated. And we would accept money donations. We're actually looking to set a system in place where you can donate online and you can receive some, documentation, some transparency. We want people to know where their money is going, showing where, how we spend the money. And it's all going to go to feeding and other things for the community, for those that need. So I would appreciate anyone, and everyone that can contribute something. Please reach out to us. Vazquez at pushworldwide.org. That's our nonprofit. Pushworldwide.org is our nonprofit website also. And you can call my office at 914-467-0597. That's 914-467-0597. Please call the office, leave a message, let me know how you'd like to help. I promise I will get back to you. If I don't get back to you that day, I will get back to you the following day. I just have a bunch of things going on, but I'm really trying to make this happen. So anyone and everyone, I should say, that can come out and be a part of it. Look, you can drop it off. I can come pick it up. I'll distribute it. I'll put it together. I just need the stuff. So I would be great. Please, anyone and everyone. And I know that there have been some people reaching out. I appreciate all those who have reached out. Thank you so much. I'm actually excited because thank you. Anyway, have a good night, everyone. We'll be back next week. Take care.